welcome to Healthcare Unlocked. I'm Wilma Gutierrez and I'm the COO for Alpha and Omega Kids.
And I'm Yanelis Hernandez. I'm the Regional Director for Alpha and Omega. We're so happy you've joined us for this special edition in honor of Autism Awareness Month.
Today's episode is titled Misconceptions of Autism, an AOK Perspective. And we're diving into the early signs, the common misconceptions, and most importantly, how we can support families and individuals on the spectrum.
We're thrilled to be joined by two wonderful individuals. First up, we have Dr. Aaron Ozzie, a best-selling author, poet, and advocate who began publishing at just 15 years old. He's earned 6 world records, launched a book, Regulus into Space, and uses his own lived experience as a creative person with autism to inspire and educate.
And also with us today is Tien Nguyen, a board-certified behavior analyst with 10 years of experience supporting children on the autism spectrum. Tien started as a registered behavioral technician and now works across Virginia and the DC area, delivering thoughtful, individualized care to families. He's also a nature and animal lover and someone we're proud to work alongside through AOK.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you both for coming.
Absolutely.
Let's start with the basics. Tien, in your work with children and families, what are some of the early signs of autism that we can share today with our caregivers and families? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different symptoms that somebody on the spectrum might start displaying as far as 6 months of age. Now, these things are really hard for parents to notice. So I would say that if you have any questions in general, especially during the first couple of years of your kid's life, if you have any misunderstanding or anything that you need to, question about, please ask them to your pediatrician because you never know where that conversation is going to lead. As far as what to look for, right? Very simple things. For example, if your kiddo, stop talking, or if they used to say certain things, but now they have stopped, or if they used to play with various toys and then suddenly they've stopped, that could be something to ask your pediatrician about. Another few things that I think you can look for is whether or not they are, playing the way that you expect them to, right? Or they are interacting with you the way that you are interacting with them. For example, if you're playing peekaboo and you notice that your kid is not engaging with you at all, and they are at the age where kids typically will, notice your behaviors, then that could be something to ask your pediatrician about.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And would you have, would you say to the families or the caregivers that they should be looking for particular milestones, those that maybe the pediatrician shares with them? Some parents receive that little booklet from the hospital that has those milestones. Would you say that that's something that parents should be looking for? Or
Definitely, yes. Depending on what age your kiddo is, if you know that they have particular milestones that they have missed, that's definitely something to be concerned about. And I would ask your pediatrician. Every kid is different, and so they might start displaying these milestones later in life, and that's totally normal. But you want to begin the process as early as possible because early diagnosis is a really good way for you to get early services. So the best way is to just go in and ask those questions, even if you feel like, you've talked about it before. You as the parent should be very adamant about certain things. And, if your pediatrician cares, then they will definitely take the time to answer all of the questions that you might have.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Ozzie, in your personal experience, how did you navigate these? Were these some of the items that some of the things that Tien just shared with us? Let me paraphrase that. Were these some of these signs show up for you initially, and maybe even before diagnoses?
Yeah,
And how did
well,
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and thank you again for having me on this podcast today. I'm super grateful for the opportunity to speak. I noticed from a very young age that I struggled with OCD, where I had to have everything neat in my room, and if my parents or other kids who I invited over to my home, if they touched something, I would immediately, intervene and put it back in its place. And or even in laying down in my bed, I would have my pillow a certain way, my blanket a certain way. It was very much a sensory thing for me. And but unfortunately, though, as I was, growing up, my behavior was, a bit strange, a bit abnormal, and I was made fun of frequently, by students at school and those around me because they didn't understand that I had autism, and I didn't understand that I had autism until later in my life. But I noticed very early on that I had certain things now looking back, that resonate strongly with autism today.
Oh, thank you for sharing that with us. It's incredible that yeah, I mean, not everyone understands. Even we're living in a time even now where we just heard so many things all over social media this last week alone with some of those areas, and we're definitely learning more. And so thank you for sharing that with us, because I think that that's super important to have people really tune in and listen to some of those areas, great areas that we're still struggling with in getting our message across for people with autism and their families.
Not new information, but just to kind of pick up on what Dr. OC said, right? I do notice that there are a lot of kids, especially early on, where, they might have very specialized interests, or they might have very specialized way to play with certain things. And that could be something to look for as well. If your kiddo is very rigid to changes, to normal everyday changes, if they are, if they are afraid of or show very strong emotions to certain things that you might not expect, definitely something to ask your pediatrician about as well. Because we do see a lot of that sort of like behavior rigidity when it comes to our kiddos, right? They want to line
Right.
things up in a certain way, they want to play in a certain way and stuff like that.
That's correct. Okay, and I do have another question, Tina, and I think this one is for you. I
Mhm,
wanted to just kind of, walk us through what the methodology of applied behavioral analysis is
mhm.
for parents and caregivers to understand, and how do we apply that to children who have been diagnosed?
Yeah, to put it in simple terms, applied behavior analysis, or ABA, is the way that the science behind all of the work that we do. We utilize evidence-based strategies, so strategies that have been researched on, strategies that have been replicated over time to go in and target the behaviors that are not working out in the environment that our kids is in. For example, right, if you have a kiddo where every single time they want a cookie, they would scream or yell or do something that is way outside of the realm of how you can ask for a cookie. And in order to get that, we go in and see, okay, so obviously they want the cookie. What are the behaviors that they're doing in order to get that cookie? And then I ask myself, what are the behaviors that we can have our kiddo practice so then that way they can get a cookie without doing all of these extra things. And a lot of times it's just, hey, why don't you ask for a cookie? Let's practice you asking for the cookie instead and see if that works. And little by little, you look at the function of what the behavior look like, why they're doing certain things, and then we practice skills to make that happen. So it's a gradual process, but it works because it still allows our kiddo to get what they need.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so today we've planned to talk about some of those misconceptions
Mhm.
or myths, as we call them, misconceptions in autism or for children and people with autism. So I'd like to have you, Tian, tell us what your thoughts are on those misconceptions, and what are those misconceptions out there right now.
Yeah, so the first misconception that I could think of that I find is very common, is that people on the autism spectrum don't learn. This is completely false, right? Everybody learns at a different pace. We all need some support at some point in our lives. Some people might need more support than others. There are people on the autism spectrum that don't need any support at all to learn. So it's just something that is completely false.
Right, I agree. Here at, the center, we have a very unique way of integrating the children into the classroom, and that is we allow them to come into the classroom initially and, choose a familiar toy or something of their that they favor, and then we pair them and we allow them to explore, and then from there we don't just jump into working with the child on any methodology. We kind of see where the child's skill sets are, and then we coming up with a program and coming up with a curriculum that works for that child and with that child's skill sets. So I think that, and we've seen incredible from one extreme to the other. We've seen children who come in with a zero language, and then you see them walking in the hallways or going towards their, the gyms, and waving and saying hi and bye. And so it's an amazing thing to be able to see. And to just, I wish that more parents would really know that this is what we do, and this is what there's so many programs out there that really do great work, and we put in curriculums and models and places that do help the child, and it is a false myth. Children do learn. Children with autism do learn.
I think that something really nice about the center and about ABA in general is that it is important to know that everyone's learning at a different pace and everyone learns differently. So that one-to-one interaction is super important because we're not just treating all of them all at one time and trying to split ourselves into 5. No, we're doing exactly what that specific child needs from us at that moment. So that's super important. And I think that that's something nice that the center has to offer, or the ABA program itself has to offer. A child may, may be learning about animals and with index cards, and we're learning about identifying animals, and then the child is ripping up the index card or wants to put the index card in their mouth, and we're like, no, instead of that, maybe the child likes puzzles, and then we're doing an animal puzzle. So now we're doing 2 different activities, and the child's getting what they want because they love to do puzzles, but we're also teaching them, hey, look, this is a dog. And so, and now they're pointing to the dog. Now they're starting to say dog, or they're starting to say woof woof. And so little things like that can make such a difference in the learning process. So it's super important. To that point is super important. That first point that you made, Tian.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just picking up on what you said about doing things that are a little bit different to teach our kiddos, right? We do this with kids that are neurotypical, or kids that don't have any diagnosis, right? Everyone just learns differently, and so some of the traditional ways that we typically teach kids might not work with somebody on the spectrum, and that's okay. We don't expect one method to work with everyone. And so, it makes a huge difference when you can take that time to kind of figure out what your kid needs and then meet them where they are at. Now, at the end of the day, they are still children, so they're still going to be resistant to learning, right? Everyone, all of the young kids are like that. But once you find something that really works for them, once you find something that they're really interested in, they can take that and fly off with it, right? I have, for example, I have some kids that know every single part about a car, or know every single part about a certain TV show. They can name every character, they can name every episode and stuff like that. And so that takes a lot of skill in order to do that. So we know that our kiddos are able to learn. So how do I utilize this very special interest and to teach them certain things that they might not be doing yet?
Right.
I would like to add that, for growing up, in a household where, things were very lax, but also strict, uh, I really resonated better with learning visually than textually. And, it was very difficult for me to sit there and read a book and try to visualize certain things that were happening. But if there were visual aids, associated with what I was reading, it would be that more impactful.
That actually raised a really interesting point, I think, because I think some of our kiddos are uber sensitive to various stimuli around them, right? Like a slight noise or something like visually that shows up and disappears might, remove all of their attention. So we also have to take a look at that too, is that are there certain things that are distracting for our kiddos? Do they need to be in a different environment where there's not that much noise, like Yunalis mentioned? So there's so many other factors that contribute to it. And so, working on our kiddos with autism can be a little bit difficult because of the way that they are learning and the way that things work very differently. So a lot of times you have to kind of start from scratch and see what works. So it does take a little bit more time, but ultimately, at the end of the day, we don't give up on our kiddos, right? Like even if there's no diagnosis, even if there are 100 diagnoses in there, if something doesn't work, we move on and do something that's different. And that's something that I love about our work is that we're always trying different things, and usually those things are very fun. So it helps to keep us
I agree.
engaging as well. Yeah.
It is very fun. I agree
Mhm.
with that. And you can learn so much from
Mhm.
the kiddos as well, the children. You
Yes.
can it's not like to say that they don't learn is a complete misconception because you're also learning from them. You're not you
Mhm.
learn how to think outside the box. You're learning how to think, okay, this is usually how we do things, but that's not the only way you can do things. There's
Mhm.
other ways you can go around to learn your colors or to say hi, so
Mhm.
it's really interesting to see, and it's a lot of fun, like
Mhm.
Tian was saying, to get to
Mhm.
work with the kids and get to know them. And then when they're teaching, you're like, okay, maybe I learned something today in today's session.
Yeah. And we have to think about it, right? Like life is weird in general, especially when somebody that is just was only been alive for a couple of years. And then, we know that their brain is wired differently, so they're going to see the world differently. And here I am going in to expect, and then I expect him to learn the skill, and he's already like struggling with figuring out how life works in general. So, there's a lot of stuff going on, and getting our kiddo to a spot where they are open to learning sometimes is the more challenging part. But like I said, it is challenging work, but at the end of the day, it's so fulfilling just because ultimately you're working with children. And so, like the things that you come up with are things that are fun. And, that's something that I think everyone should be mindful of as well, right? Is that, hey, we're teaching our kiddos to, that learn very differently. So we have to teach differently, but that doesn't mean that it has to be boring. It doesn't mean that we are, like putting more expectation on these kids. Sometimes it means to put less expectation on them and see how it goes. And, it's just very rewarding when something clicks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have a motto here where we say always sprinkle a little patience, sprinkle a little understanding with the proper setting and the right support system. You have paved the classroom and you have paved the way for learning. And so we live by that motto here, and I think we've watched it. And as you stated, it's super rewarding, and that's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have anything else to add? Okay, wonderful. So Tian, can you walk us through another big misconception or myth for people with autism?
Yeah, of course. So the next myth is people with autism are not social. This is, again, completely false, right? Everyone craves connection. Some craves connection less than others. So, people on the autism spectrum might have a hard time with emotions and displaying those emotions, but that doesn't mean that they don't crave that social connection that we all crave.
That's correct. Dr. Josie, do you want to weigh in on this for your time, like on a personal level for you? How was that like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think growing up, it wasn't just about being social. Like if I was at a party or with kids at school, or any other function where there was more than one of me, I knew that I could be social if I wanted to. But I've always been someone who has appreciated the art of listening. So I definitely listen more than I talk, and it's just because it's not that I don't have anything to say. It's just that I'm taking in everything that is happening in my surroundings. And personally for me, it was difficult to connect with fellow students, other kids my own age. I was more inclined to connect with those who were much older than I was, like parents and teachers, and trying to absorb their wisdom and propel myself in the right direction.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And that's exactly, it speaks to the heart of who we are. And that's why we want to debunk all these myths today. We wish that we could do this once and for all, but we know we have a long road ahead. But I'm very happy that we are here one myth at a time to debunk it today. And that's the name of this podcast today. Yanela, you want to weigh in? I know that we were sharing, we're constantly sharing about working both home-based and working in the children's homes, and also serving sometimes as a teacher for a group children. What does that look like to you in terms of socialization? You can share that with all of us.
Socialization is a big part of development, right? So, or of our lives in general. So in the homes, you can see anywhere from the family members, so anywhere from parents to siblings to grandparents in early intervention. It's not just that we're treating the child and that's it. It's a family-based program. So we are working with the families as well, the parents, the siblings, whoever's around the child, to give them those strategies, those tools to use throughout the week, throughout the days. And where we're not there, we're only there a couple of hours at a time or 30 minutes at a time, depending on who the therapist is. So it's really important that we're giving them those tools to show them, okay, maybe the child doesn't want to communicate this way, but let's start with gestures first. And then we're working on gestures, giving them options. And then that way they're like, oh, they're not like ignoring me. They just don't know how to tell me I want this, or, they're not screaming for no reason. They want something and they can't say it. So, little details like that are super important. Their environments, just to go in on what Tien was saying as well, how loud it is. In a room, we can be in the house and at the dining room table that's next to the kitchen, and maybe someone's cooking and stirring the pot and it's making a little noise, and that to a child's may be a lot more frustrating than it is to us, and we don't even realize it, and that's really getting or bothering them. So we move to the living room, and then there you see they're focusing more, they're able to sit for longer periods of times, and they're able to interact with their sibling or their parents. So little details like that. And then in the center, it's really interesting to see, because you'll see like the aides bring the children together, their one-on-one aides will work on their children and say, and work on sharing. Sharing a lot of times is a goal on their service plan. So something so simple is such a big deal to them, because now they're learning how to share their favorite toy, and they're turn taking, and then it leads to reciprocal, and then so now it just snowballs. And so the environment at the center too is really important. What if the classroom is too loud and the child is, and now everyone's laughing and singing and we're dancing, and there's a lot going on. So maybe the child is like, okay, I need a sec. And so we bring them to the side, and we'll have them sit maybe on the other side of the table where they can slowly come back around, and so it's not so we're constantly being mindful of their needs and their wants. And so sometimes the environments that they're in have a big impact on how they socialize. It's not just that they don't want to socialize. Maybe they're not so comfortable talking to somebody, or maybe they just want to say hi, and to them that is being social, and they did the best that they could that day, and that's okay. So just those little things are really important. I also think that we can debunk this one right away with Dr. Ozzy here on the call. He has his own podcast, literally. So to say that people with autism are not social is absolutely false. Dr. Ozzy, I mean, not everyone does want to do a podcast, but they want to socialize in different ways and express themselves in different ways, and they want to get to know people. So I think that Dr. Ozzy is proof that this is absolutely false, and we have him sitting right here.
Well, I really appreciate that. And, I just want to add, that, when I was young, I always told people that I was a horrible test taker. And, people asked why. And I said, well, it was because when I would sit in the classroom, I would hear the teachers munching on a snack, or the rustling of papers in the back of the room, or, other kids, having side conversations. And it was just a sensory overload for me, and I could never really focus on what the test was actually instructing me to do. But there is something that I really live by, and that's a little quiet can go a long way. And so if I was put in the right environment, if I was given the quiet that I needed, I was able to flourish in so many different ways. And that's why I've been able to create so many engaging and relatable stories that children and families around the world are loving and appreciating every day of their lives. So
That's amazing.
I think you also brought up another point too, is that the way that like the best environment for you to test take is going to be very different from what the school was able to give, and that I find that is very similar to the stuff that we see on our day-to-day as well, right? For example, you go in and the parent tell you that, oh, my kid, they don't like to play with other kids, they're not very social and stuff like that. And then when you look at the kid, it's like, oh, so they are playing, they're playing with their cars, but instead of playing with the car where they're pushing the cart forward, they're playing with the wheels of the car because that's something that they're interested in. And then here I am as an adult coming in and being like, no, you should play in a different way and play that way with this kid, right? Imagine how would that make you feel, right? Somebody is telling you that the way that you enjoy yourself it's not appropriate. So now you have to change that, and here, do that with this stranger that you don't know, or do that with another kid that plays differently than you.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes we create a little bit of like a confirmation bias regarding whether or not our kids are quote unquote social, because like I said, they we expect certain things from them. We want their social interaction to look a certain way, and sometimes it just doesn't work like that. Sometimes things our kiddos being social looks very different than what we imagine it to be.
Yes,
Yeah.
and Yanela said it best, in terms of you being really a pillar, to our industry. Dr. Rosie being that a testament to, all the myths that anyone can think of. You can debunk them all right here, with all your accomplishments, and knowing you for as long as we've known you. I know I can only say that we really do admire you. We have so much respect for you, and we've watched you in your regular suit in action. And so, yeah, it's great to have you. Great to have you.
thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome.
And I do have another story that I want to mention. So, this is another example of when our kiddos, that crave that connection. I had a client that I worked with a long time ago, and we were told that he wasn't social. But then when I saw him at his daycare, he was playing by himself, and then, he'll just go onto like this little log and jump off, and everyone is just kind of being like, okay, why does he just, keep jumping off this log? But all I had to do was, there was another kid next to me that's not the client, and he was just like, what is he doing? And I said, oh, I don't know. You should just go and ask him. And so that kid went and asked my client, and then next thing you know, both kids are jumping off this log, and then next thing you know, multiple kids came and joined them, and it now became a thing where everyone's just going to jump off this log, right? And it just shows you that, it just I could have just been like, oh, he's just doing something random, don't worry about it. But the way that we interact with our kids and the way that we interact with those around them definitely play a big part. Because if we don't think, like, if I just acted as if this play style is normal, then other people are going to think so too, right? There is no one sitting here like coming up with definitions on how children should play. They're all gonna find things that are random, and then it's just suddenly it's fun, and then next thing you know, everyone's doing it. So that's that's just something that I noticed too, is that sometimes certain things are random, but then like it's fun in some way.
Awesome. So we're moving on to another big huge myth for autism.
Yeah, so another myth is that you can't tell you can tell when someone has autism or someone doesn't have autism. This is actually not true. Autism is a spectrum. No individual is alike. Even when the behaviors look the same, there might be different functions to that behavior. And it's just one of those things where you see a lot, right? People, parents, or clients wants us to work on skills that make their kid appear to be less autistic and stuff like that. And there's just no way to target that, because there is no one way that autism look like.
That I think it's important that we're having talks like this now, where we are raising awareness to autism, to autism, so that people can understand, okay, it's a spectrum. It's not just one way. Sometimes they do have they are verbal, sometimes they're not verbal, but maybe they can communicate differently, or I think it's important for people to understand the sensory part of things, where it can be overstimulating if they're in a loud place. And so just little things like that. I think it's important that we are shedding light on this, because I think people will be more accepting or more understanding, and have more caring towards people, just to know and think of all these little things that play a role in having autism. It's not just how you look.
Something that I'd like to add is, growing up, as I mentioned before, people that were around me, other kids, other adults, they perceived my behavior, as abnormal, as something unusual, or I was just going through a phase. I heard that quite a bit, and I still really don't like that term, because I wasn't going through a phase. I was trying to I was trying to make sense of the autism, that I had, and, and still have to this day. And, it wasn't until later in life that I was diagnosed with it. And, but for years, I did certain things in a certain way where people just said, oh, that's just what Aaron does, and, they really wouldn't make sense of it. But, to make sense of it now, it has empowered me to, better control it, and, to, be on a more level plane, with, feeling a little different. And it's okay to feel different, and I'm proud to have autism. I'm proud proud to, be in the position that I am in this life, and, to not only understand, how best to, deal with my autistic tendencies, but how to help others who are in the same situation.
Yeah, and that's something that I'm always very big on teaching our kiddo, right? That, hey, listen, there are certain things that you're interested in. There are certain things that you're going to like that other people might not understand, but it's okay. Here, let me teach you the skills on how to elaborate that, right? Like, remember that if you just start a conversation with the stuff that you're interested in, someone might not understand what's going on. So you might have to give them a little bit of a background context. So some of the ways that we work is to help our kids to be able to explain themselves, right? And that in a way will kind of debunk some of these myths further on in their life too. Is that, hey, listen, I might be autistic, or my brother might be autistic, or something like that, and we might do things this way, but that doesn't mean that we are not able to do the stuff that you expect us to do as far as the greater society as a whole. And I also think that we also have to change the way that our society views individuals that have some sort of mental diagnosis, right? The term autism can sometimes evoke like a very negative connotation of what the behaviors look like. So we as a society needs to change the way that we view these kind of things, just so that way we allow others that are on the spectrum to not feel so singled out whenever they talk about their autism diagnosis.
Right. Absolutely. And that is something that we encourage a lot of our families on a daily basis, throughout all our different departments. And so that is key. That is key 100% to, really hone in on this. Okay, we can move on to the next debunked myth.
Yeah, the next myth is actually something that you hear a lot, even for many years now, and is that autism is caused by vaccines or poor parenting. This is simply not true. Currently, the most like the best theory that we have is that autism is a neurodevelopmental condition with genetic and environmental influences. That sounds a mouthful, right? But ultimately, it basically means we don't know.
It is a myth that started, I believe, in 1998 or something. It was, I believe the researcher's name was Wakefield, and he published his findings that the MMR, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, was actually the cause for autism. And because it was such a renowned, medical journal, and it was printed, it became the thing. It became, yeah, this is really factual. It's true. Only to later find out that he had manipulated his data for those findings. And in the year 2010, fast forward to the year 2010, he not only, it is completely disputed, as found that he falsified the data, but he also lost his medical license because of this. But by then, I guess it was too late. People, it was in their minds, and once you put some information out there, whether it is factual or not factual, people tend to go with it. Until this day, we're still trying to, get away from that myth, get away from, the fact that vaccines are, the cause or the root cause of autism. And we experienced that here, even at the center with some of the families who come in, and in New York State, in New York City, that is, it's a law, right? It's Department of Health law that we have to have our children immunized. So who are we to tell our families when they tell us, well, I don't really want to have it done because I'm afraid, or, when they're enrolling, even when they're enrolling in our early intervention center, and I don't want to have my child vaccinated, so I can't have him go to your center. And so how do we tell them, this is a myth? We try to educate them. We give them, flyers, we give them papers, but we ask them to go back to their pediatrician. But at the end of the day, who are we to tell them, you can't, this is a myth, but we are hoping that we can bring about awareness that, people can research it. It's out there. The information is out there. It was completely misled us for many, many years. And until today, as I stated, we still have families and people out there who do believe this. And this is their, you have to respect their, ideas. So.
Mhm. Yeah, it's unfortunate because it can be so harmful, right? Like even if you don't like, let's say for example, if you don't give your kids a vaccine and and they don't have autism, it kind of furthers like confirm that bias. But then at the same time, it could still so your kid doesn't have autism, that's great. But then without all of these immunization, it exposes your kids to various other diseases that is super preventable. So, there's definitely a double-edged sword there. And, these rhetorics, have caused families to miss out on resources, to miss out on education for their kids just because of this harmful rhetoric.
Correct.
Yeah, I'd like to add something because I think it's both very relevant as of today and also it ties into what we're discussing right now is, there was in the news recently, and I'm not trying to go political by any means, but I would like to bring up the fact that Robert Kennedy Jr. did go before the world and especially the United States and said, that people with autism are unable to live normal lives, but not only that, that there is soon going to be a cure for autism and, many other false claims. And, I feel like the spreading of that misinformation is just another way, another form of, parents, believing that information and, depriving their child or their children, with autism, from necessary resources that are going to help guide them in life.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it kind of oversimplifies this very, like broad topic, right? Because there is no one single factor that contributes to autism. So even if we want to do the research to find it, it's going to take us many years. And I don't think the timeline that Robert Jr. talked about is realistic just because like there's so many different things that you have to do in order to set up a scientific research experiment and you have to like replicate it and all that stuff. So it's just not realistic for us to want to look at like one single cause of autism because after many decades of research, we still can't narrow down any single one. It's
No.
just multiple factors. So for us to take a look at each one of them one by one, I don't know how realistic it is to pour all of our resources to just figuring that part out. While in the meantime, more kids are going to continue to need support, and we're divulging our time and energy to finding the one cause for it that have been scientifically debunked for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think not knowing the cause, a lot of people like want that control, want to know want to know why, and then because we don't know why, it drives people crazy. They're like, "What? I want to know. Like, what is it? Tell
Yeah.
me." And so that's scary, but we also should not be spreading information that's not factual. You know what I mean? So that can be very dangerous as well. So we have to be careful with how we're speaking about autism in general. If people are making broad statements like that, you can tell already that they have no information. They're really not educated on autism. They're not working with children with autism or individuals with autism on a daily basis. They may not know. I mean, at this point, a lot of people do know someone with autism and in their lives. But sometimes people don't have that experience. They don't understand it. And that goes to show you that it's still very important that we spread the awareness and that we're kind of educating people on the facts of autism and not just saying random statements so that we can make people feel good. Oh, yeah, we'll find the cure. And then everyone's like, oh, that's what we've been waiting for. So thank God. But then that's not true. You know what I mean? So it's kind of it's really unfair, I think, to the people with autism mostly it's unfair to them because
And their
that's horrible.
families.
And their families, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
because a lot of these rhetorics put the blame back on the family,
Oh,
something that's
Right.
completely outside of their control,
Right.
right? And now you're making a mother feel bad that she's giving her kids vaccine. So and then of course, like, if they didn't get the vaccine and they still get autism, now they're blaming it on the parents' choices. Oh, you must have not parented them right or something like that.
Right.
And that's just, very harmful to the parents and to the kiddo.
anyone have anything else to add? So we can move on to our next one.
Yeah, and this is our last myth that we have here, and is that autistic people cannot contribute to society. This is flat out wrong. It's a very harmful rhetoric. While some people on the autism spectrum might need special care, some might need special care for their whole lives. It doesn't mean that many, like that all people with autism need special care. Some don't need any special care at all and go on to lead successful lives and career and make a huge difference in their community.
Absolutely. And this really talks about what Dr. Ozzie brought up before with RFK, Jr.
Mhm.
And he flat out said this on national, TV. He's got people, parents are, irate about this. And of course, were we, because it is the biggest lie. I mean, if Dr. Ozzie is here to be a complete testament to this, but I firmly am a big believer, and if you treat the child and you're servicing children with autism, I believe that with all my heart that we are here to
Mhm.
see them through and to do the very thing that we talked about from day one, is to integrate them into their communities, to be able to help children with autism and have normal and meaningful lives. And we not only do we have Dr. Ozzie to prove that, we also employ at Alpha and Omega Kids people with autism and people with disabilities. I have been employing people with disabilities, I want to say, for the last 20 years. And so, I think that it's important that we send a message, but one that we really do believe in, and one that we really care about. And of course, what this what RFK Jr. said was insulting on so many levels and to so many people. And I just, maybe you guys want to weigh in on it and talk a little bit more about this. And
Yeah, definitely. I think he mentioned something about how people on the spectrum, will need special support their whole lives and stuff like that. But the way I see it is that we all at some point need special care in our lives, right? If a kid is delayed in, 25% delayed in their communication abilities, we don't just like, stop helping them. We continue to do that. That's the whole point in providing our children with education. If they are needing to, special support in one area, we do our best to target that. Now, there are many adults that are walking out right now that don't have the autism diagnosis, and they are still functioning members of society. But I actually don't like using that kind of language, because like I don't personally think that you have to like contribute something in order to be a functioning member of society, right? There are people that are not able to go to work, but they can, they live fulfilling lives and they help support their families and they do all the things that we need to do. It's just they can't physically go and pay taxes. But because of their one reason or another, that doesn't mean that we, stop talking to them. Doesn't mean that we stop inviting them to things. They are still members of our community. And I sometimes think that having this argument that, oh, people on the spectrum, don't contribute and they need special care, that it's something that, if you remove that support from those individuals, it means that no one will get that support at any point in their lives. And that's just a very dangerous kind of mindset to be in.
Yeah, I think we all have something that we're good at or things that we're good at and not good at.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not gonna be a mechanic. Like, that's just something I'm not gonna do. So people, same thing with people with autism. Some of them
Yeah.
are really good at building something, and then they can go and get a career in building. We have, like Wilma was saying, there's people here who have autism themselves, and they're assisting with programs here at the center, or they're, assisting with marketing, and they have, there's so many different it's the world is yours, you know what I mean? It's what you make of it, and it's giving them those opportunities to be able to prove themselves, and to live a life that we all deserve too. And like you said, there's so many resources and different programs out there that you can join to help you build job skills for jobs, and help you find jobs, whether you're in college as enrolled in a city college here in New York, or if you're an individual with autism who's looking for a job as well. There's so many programs out there that assist with this with these big milestones in life. So we're starting here with early intervention, and then that's just the first step of it all, right? And then there's still so much to offer out there. And I think that people just shouldn't limit those individual autism. It's not fair.
Yeah, I would like to add something as well. I believe that, my having autism has led me to, the point where I'm at in this life. And I'm grateful for all the challenges that it has given me, because, if I didn't learn to overcome those challenges, I wouldn't be, the Dr. Arnozzi that people everywhere know today. And something, this is actually a small little story that I rarely tell, but when I would go to the bookstore with my mother, when or many bookstores, in fact, that's one of the ways that I became interested in writing and reading and literature and so forth. And I would just pick up these large books from the shelves and, rub my fingers across the binding and open up the pages and feel the ink and the images. And it was very much a sensory thing for me. And I just loved it so much, where I was like, wow, I'm like, I hope one day that I can, devote my life to, a physical manifestation of creativity like this, and share it with people that I love. And, that's exactly what I did.
That's incredible. I think that that's incredible, Dr. Ozi. I never knew that story. You never shared that one with us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a small little detail. So in certain ways, I feel like my autism is the reason why I am a writer. Why I originally discovered my love for reading is because it was that sensory thing for me, that walking into these bookstores and feeling the weight of these books, and just seeing how happy they made people. I associated their happiness with my happiness, and it just put me down that right path.
That's really powerful. And I think that it's going to definitely resonate with a lot of the families and a lot of people with, autism watching this segment today. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you did mention the whole book writing, because Dr. Ozi actually wrote a book for Alpha and Omega. And one of the viewers, I believe, are getting a copy of the book. And then we'll have, of course, a link so that more people can order the book if they'd like to. But yeah, he wrote an amazing book for Alpha and Omega, and we're really excited for people to see it.
Yeah, it's called Our Everyday Heroes.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I believe we are giving away a signed copy actually of the book. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Today has been amazing having this discussion with all of you. At AOK, we believe that every child, deserves access to personalized support. Also, whether it's therapy or education therapy at therapeutic services, I would say for our early intervention program. We also have ABA services for the older kiddos. We definitely are, we're built our center is to empower both the children and absolutely their families. That's our motto. That has always been our motto, and we're definitely happy about that. At AOK, we believe that every child,
We're really proud of what we've built here, and even more proud of the team and the families who bring it to life every day. We couldn't do it without them.
Absolutely. We have an incredible staff. I have to say that this has been such a rich experience. Just sharing here and being super transparent, with all these myths and making sure that we debunk every one of them. And so Dr. Ozzy and team, thank you so much. Yanellis, thank you also, even though you're part of the Alpha team.
we had a much bigger like a much longer list, but we really had to pick like our top 5, just because once we talk about misconception, I can go on all day.
So I want to thank you all. Thank you all for your honesty. And I want to thank you and Dr. Ozzy Tien for your honesty, insight, and your heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, we will be choosing a random viewer. So if you join the live and you comment, we could if you're on the live and you comment, we'll be choosing a random winner for the book today. And you can also, you could drop comments, ask questions, or just say hello. We're here to chat right with you right now. So we did get a few questions in already. If we don't get through all the questions, it's okay. We'll make sure to answer them on Instagram. We want to make sure that you guys are commenting on the live, so you can, of course, win your a signed copy of the book. But for right now, we did get some questions, so I'm just gonna ask randomly. Let me see what we have here. So one of the questions is, what advice would you give to parents who are navigating a new diagnosis and don't know where to start?
I think that's definitely something that I can answer. There's so much going on when you first get that diagnosis. The number one thing is you should look at what are the missing pieces to your kid's diagnosis, right? The diagnosis say that they need more work on verbal communication, or that they need more work on tolerating, changes in regular everyday life, in a more effective way. So from there, you know what your kid will need. And then from there, you can talk to your pediatrician to see if they have any recommendations. ABA therapy is definitely one of the ways that we get our kiddos to learn things. It's one of the best methods to help utilize kids to learn more and stuff like that. So I would definitely recommend looking into an ABA company to see where they can help with your kids' autism diagnosis. But also at the same time, I work in ABA, so that's going to be my answer to everything. But to make this short, you would just have that conversation with your pediatrician, and then from there, they can give you a guide on where to go from there, whether or not signing up for speech therapy, occupational therapy, ABA therapy, or any other kind of therapy that, might work for your kiddo.
Yeah, and so this that leads into the next question here that says, how important is early intervention, and what kinds of services should families seek out first? So the same way you're biased towards ABA, I think I would say early. I think I would have answered differently and said if the child is anywhere from birth to 3 years of age, we do have early intervention services for them. And it's not only for children with autism. These children have other developmental delays or disabilities, that we work with them as well. You can do it through your pediatrician. But this is the building blocks, right? I was saying that earlier. These children are like sponges. They learn so much within the first 3 years. If we can catch it sooner, rather than later, we're already setting them up for skills they can use in school. And in the outside world when they do start their preschool services or kindergarten. And so early intervention is super important. In New York City, you can go to your doctors can refer you. You can be referred directly to an agency just like ours. And so these services are really important. I don't know if you want to say anything about early intervention, Wilma, because you are the queen of early intervention.
Thank you. But yes, I think you said it best. It is absolutely important that look at the children's milestones, discuss it with the pediatrician, and then of course there's you can also go on the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, New York City Bureau of Early Intervention. You can also call 311 for services, or you can call one of the agencies listed for early intervention. And at Alpha and Omega Kids, we're always here to guide you. We're based out of New York City, but we are also doing early intervention services in other states. We are in the state of Virginia. We're in the state of Georgia. We just got getting licensed in the state of Northeastern Pennsylvania, and Florida next. So we're really busy here. We're bridging the gap one state at a time, one child and one family at a time. But we are doing that. So we are here for you. If we do a lot of advocacy services also that are not reimbursable, but we are here to provide anyone with the guidance they need. And whether it is, choosing an early intervention site, or choosing, an ABA program that's adequate for your child, or whether it is just understanding the diagnosis of autism.
Awesome. There is another question that says, in what ways can community members and local organizations help build more inclusive spaces for people on the spectrum?
This one is going to be a really complicated answer, because there's so many ways that you can do. There's so many things you can do.
We could be here all day.
Yeah, and I think one of the best ways that costs no money at all is just to understand that people on the autism spectrum just learn differently. They sometimes think differently, so they might approach a situation in ways that you might not have think of. And so allowing room for that understanding, allowing room for you to be more patient, it's going to go a long way. But if you're asking about like what can a community as a whole do, I think just providing more spaces for people with any sort of disability to go and hang out, providing more spaces in parks, providing more spaces for people just to kind of gather and have fun is going to be something that helps everyone in the community, but B, also allow for people with the disability to go and not feel like they have to be judged. They can go and just have a good time. And then from there, I believe that, we can target more as a whole community once we're in the community.
Yes, and I would also add that out in Northeastern Pennsylvania, we've had a ball, like just trying to get started over there, and it's been such an inclusive way to do things in certain communities. And spaces will allow us to, if they have a community board or community room, or go to your local community board and let them know what services can we tap into and what resources are out there. And if you want to put even, I suggest a lot of the parents out there in Eastern Pennsylvania, they have a lot of community rallies, and they bring within their own living space, or I believe the community they live in, if they have, let's say, a community room, they host a party, or they bring about, games for children, and then send out flyers and get those out there. Also, be in touch with some of the legislators in different states rules and regulations, policies are ever changing and ever flowing. So it's important to stay on top of those. Those are just a few of the things that just pop out of my, we've been so busy working to, just create different things in different states. So I think that that's one of the ways that you can help build locally for community members.
Yeah. I know even some local communities have like sports organizations that work with children with autism or even disabilities as well. So that is something very inclusive that people can look into. Another question that we had here is, the last question that we have is, what's one thing you wish more people understood about autism, and how can we help spread awareness beyond this month?
Hmm.
We could be here all day for this one. I think, Dr. Ozzie, what do you think? What do you want to say?
I think that, something just in general needs to be said about those with autism, that, children with autism need to be given the freedom to explore new things and to, experience what life has to offer and not be restricted by, opinions or actions of others that are looking after them. And, it doesn't have to necessarily be something creative like writing or art or music, but whatever form of expression, because there are many forms of expression, whatever form of expression they choose, they should have the freedom to do so, and to really find ways to come together with society and stand up for who they are, and just hold on to the fact that it's okay to be different. It's okay to be everyone is special in their own ways, and you just have to stand by that and hold that close to heart.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I think also one thing for the person that asked the question is that it takes one person, right, to raise the village. So if one person takes the lead to really bring out awareness, whether that's in your local community or at large, if it takes one person to build that Facebook page to talk about autism, now we have social media, we have so many different outlets. Where before we were just going knocking door to door, like the Avon lady, getting getting people to say to, even in New York City, to transition from early intervention to the Committee on Preschool Special Education. And that was hard enough. And finally, we're getting there. We're getting it together more than we ever did. But it took us a lot of door knocking to get to where we are. But I think with the advent of social media now, if it takes one person, like the person who wrote that question, then you take the lead, and then someone's going to follow suit, and therefore, and so on. And you'll see that we will get there, as I stated earlier, one day, one person at a time, and one state at a time. And maybe even there's one company out there already global. They're amazing. So yeah, I think that's key to spread awareness.
Okay, so we didn't answer all of I know there's still questions coming in, so we'll keep answering, keep commenting, and we'll answer as they come in. If you have any other questions, we're happy to be here and answer that.
I don't know if Dr. Ozzie wants to answer how has your experience as an autistic creative shaped the way you tell stories and advocate for others? I love that question. So do you?
Yeah, I would be more
answer?
than happy to answer that question. I think that, I kind of touched on it before, but, growing up as a visual learner, it pushed me to, go down the rabbit hole of writing children's books and, to visually represent, what was being told in my stories. And, it's kind of funny because, I go to bookstores and you can imagine me, go browsing through the novels and, other sections, but I always sit in the children's book area because I'm probably the oldest person sitting in that area because, I love to read the stories that other authors create, but also to see the trends, that are going on on, you know, in that space, you know, so that I can better improve my stories, you know, and, you know, tell stories in a more impactful and meaningful way. So, you know, but it just, you know, looking back on that from when I was a child up till now, you know, everything that autism has done for me has been nothing but positive and, you know, uplifting.
This has been such a rich and meaningful conversation. Dr. Ozzie, Tien, thank you for your honesty, insight, and heart.
A big thank you to all of our viewers.
If you haven't already, drop a comment saying watching in the chat for a chance to win a signed copy of our Everyday Heroes by Dr. Ozzie. So engage with us, stay tuned, and don't miss this opportunity.
This has been Healthcare Unlocked. We'll see you soon.